Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay this evening. I gotta be honest, this day has gone by relatively fast. Let me check my volume. Let's see. Always check your mic. While I check my mic, I want to thank everyone for the support. And if you dig what I'm putting down, please, by all means, like the video, share the video. And of course, you can always support through Patreon or Super Chat. It all helps the channel. So Donald Trump has been attacking NATO allies or other countries. The thing I want to talk about today specifically, though, is the attacks on Angela Merkel and Germany. Now, this has been somewhat fascinating politics, but Donald Trump, in a meeting, you're going to hear essentially lashed out, scolding NATO allies. And he's scolding them in one very specific refrain, saying that they were essentially captives of Russia. Now, this is amazing, coming from a president who they've said essentially is a Putin puppet, is some salacious relationship with Putin, is some kind of Putin hand sock, sock puppet. He said they're captive. Now, there's some historical significance to this, and there's reasons why Germany is why this is taking place. So let me explain. Donald Trump is at a summit right here, and at the NATO summit, he attacked Germany and his NATO countries for not paying enough, but he also attacked for a pipeline. It's the pipeline part that I want to talk about. Trump issues blistering attack on Germany at NATO breakfast. Germany is controlled by Russia. I love that. The irony. I love the irony. Now, I think the Trump and Russia stuff is nonsense. But the idea that Trump, who's for the last 2 years, they've screamed at every mountaintop that he is a Putin puppet, that he is controlled by Vladimir Putin, that he is some kind of animatronic robot that Vladimir Putin is sitting in a lair somewhere moving the dials and moving the pieces, and Donald Trump is just going about destroying the world like Frankenstein. And this person who has been cast in such terms, cast in that light, who they've even said, we're not even comfortable with you having a face-to-face conversation with the leader of another nation, meaning Vladimir Putin on this, that he's like, you guys are captive by Russia. I love it. Love it. I love it. I love it. I love politics. Now, but that being said, he says they're captive. Now, let's explain why. Donald Trump, and let me explain what he says. He's bashing them. He's bashing them pretty roughly. And the problem is, he's not acting in the interests of us. He's acting in the interests of a very small 1%. Donald Trump talking about draining swamp. Donald Trump is the swamp. He's the goddamn Loch Ness monster. And now he's abroad, functioning at the behest of his funders, of his donors. Not the people who put him in that office, of his donors. I'm going to show you what I mean. So, right here. President Donald Trump came out swinging ahead of NATO's summit by slamming Germany for not spending enough on defense and accusing the country of being captive to Russia. We need to talk about both of those. Germany is totally controlled by Russia, Trump said in a searing critique of Germany's gas pipeline deal with the country NATO calls its greatest threat to their alliance. I think it's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia where we're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia, Trump said. So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries, and the numerous of these countries go out and make pipeline deals with Russia where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia, Trump said. So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, but you're paying billions of dollars to Russia? I think that's very inappropriate. Trump was referring to the controversial $12 billion deal proposed Nord Stream 2 pipeline between Russia and Germany, and a stunning back and forth at Wednesday morning bilateral breakfast at the ambassador's residence in Brussels, NATO Secretary General John Stoltenberg defended NATO's alliance as Trump continued to lob attacks on Germany. You know, NATO is the alliance of 29 nations. There's some disagreements, Stoltenberg said, and gas from Russia to Germany is where the alliance allies disagree. Despite the differences, we've always been able to protect and defend each other. We're stronger together than apart. 2 world wars and a Cold War showed we're stronger together than apart. He's a politician. Trump wasn't buying it. How can you be together when a country is getting its energy from a person you want protection against, or from the group you want protection against? Trump asked. When we stand together, also in dealing with Russia, we're stronger, Stoltenberg replied. You're just making Russia richer. You're not dealing with Russia, you're making Russia richer, Trump said. We're supposed to protect Germany, but they're getting their energy from Russia. Explain that. And it can't be explained, Trump said. Sitting at the table with the president were Secretary of Defense James Mattis, Chief of State John Kelly, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and NATO Ambassador Kay Bailey Hutchinson, essentially the Rogues Gallery. Trump defended his public reprimanding of allied countries over the defense spending. Look, what this is about is a pipeline. But the reason Trump is so fixated on this pipeline is because Trump wants our companies, American companies, to get their hands on that pipeline. He doesn't want the German companies. Germany is going to be for lack of oil for the most part. Germany gets its oil from Russia right now, but the amount that they're going to get from Russia is going to increase as the amount from Europe decreases. Now, the amount from Europe is decreasing just from the natural, deduction of oil, the lessening of oil in that sense. But Germany is going to need to get their oil from somewhere. Now, aside from Germany needing to get their oil from somewhere, Germany has made the argument that, look, we can lower our energy costs. But but from Trump's standpoint, Trump just wants American companies to get their hands on that oil. They know that Germany is going to be a lucrative energy market, and they want those markets. That's what this is about. Markets. Oil and pipelines. Trump just want our companies to get their hands on that stuff. Just to be clear, this is the Washington Post. Germany is indeed Russia's biggest export market in Europe for gas, with a dependency that might grow further once Nord Stream 2 is finished. The project will roughly double Russia's export volume via the Baltic route that goes through the original Nord Stream pipeline. Over the next few decades, Europe-owned gas resources, which accounted for more than a third of the supplies in 2016, are expected to gradually disappear. Britain, Norway, Netherlands, and Western and Europe's biggest producers, primarily relying on natural gas fields in the North Sea. As Europe's own supplies are running out, the United States is hoping to gain access to a profitable market with a growing demand. He's hitting them because he's the spoiled child that wants to get to their markets. That's what this is about. The second part of this, however, he does have a point. NATO was supposed to be around to be against the Soviet Union. And in fact, man, there's so many historical intersections with this. So before we get to the intersections, let's talk about this from 2 ways. The main point is that Trump wants the energy. Essentially, the corporations that are backing Trump wants their access to the energy markets. So Trump is being derisive. He wants access to the energy markets. He's scolding them in this way of kind of nailing the hypocrisy of, well, wait a minute, you say NATO is needed. We, the United States, need to protect you, like, the big guy protecting the kid from the bullies. All right, fair enough. You're saying Russia's a bully, fair enough. Then how are you making deals with the bully? How are you doing that? That's what he's asking. Now, the Ukraine is saying something similar because Russia shut off the Ukraine's oil or shut off their gas at one point when they were having back and forth during the conflict. Some of the nations disagree with Germany with them doing this. So it is not entirely and completely purely about corporate profits. but corporate profits and getting their hands on those oil markets definitely plays a role in this. Look, I suspect it plays all the role in it, if I'm being honest. But that's me. I think these things are a little bit more cynical in this stuff. But either way, he does make a good point. You're terrified of Russia. By the same token, you're making a deal with Russia where you're going to be dependent on them for oil. That doesn't make sense. How does that work? There's a special kind of logic to it, though, where it might. The trade relationship that's going to be created between Germany and Russia. Germany and Russia has somewhat of a special relationship anyway, just from the East German, East-West Germany Cold War history that took place between the two countries. It is possible that having some level of trade and some level of interaction between the countries fosters somewhat of a relationship that keeps hostilities down between the countries. That is very possible, as opposed to taking a hostile stance where you're dealing with them purely through militaristic terms. I want to talk about the historical precedent for this stuff. But yes, Germany is going to need oil. The United States looked at this as a great energy market and an energy opportunity. Donald Trump is being abrasive because he wants his access to the energy markets. The second point, before getting to the historical context. The other point that they made about them not paying enough. Trump harps on this. The reason he harps on this has to do with this little tidbit. When he kept saying they're not paying enough, I'm like, I asked the question, where's the money going? Who's getting the money? And once again, we have Trump working at the behest of the donors that pay him, the weapons manufacturers. A new report by Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, revealed that despite the slump in global arms sale industries for 5 consecutive years, in 2016, arms producers world over saw $375 billion in profits, with the United States weapons industry claiming over half of the global sales. The growth in the arms sales was expected and was driven by the implementation of new national weapons programs, ongoing military operations in several countries, and persistent regional tensions that are leading to an increased demand for weapons, according to SIPRI latest analysis. Per document, the United States company sales rose by 4%. U.S. weapons producers claimed the largest share of the sales, about 58%, raked up $217 billion worth of sales. Over half of the 20 weapons sellers listed by the SIPRI in this report were United States companies. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman ranked among the top 5, with Lockheed Martin being the world's top producer. Per SIPRI fact sheet, Lockheed Martin sales grew by 10.7% last year. Look, the reason why Trump keeps telling them, up the money that you spend, up the money that you spend, up the money that you spend, is because over half of that money is going into the pockets of the United States government or the United States corporations that is paying for those weapon systems. Trump is over there at the behest of the companies that are sending him oil and gas, and in this case, weapons manufacturers. As for the oil and gas stuff, look, there's a historical significance to this. Back during World War II, well, two things. First, NATO. In World War I, or before World War I erupted, I think in the 1800s, there was a policy by Austria-Hungary, the Austria-Hungary Empire, that looked at other nations and it said, we need to gobble up nations, attack those nations, and gobble them up before they get to the point of being strong enough, or before they get gobbled up by Russia. The thought being, before those countries joined with Russia and Russia became a stronger enemy to us, we ourselves need to take those countries over, even if it was a preemptive war. Meaning the Bush Doctrine going all the way back in the 1800s. Austria-Hungary, however, did not have all that good of a military, and it was more threat than actual teeth. Ultimately, they found themselves being the junior partner of Germany in that campaign. Now, the point I'm trying to get at here is that strategy of gobble up before it gets to Russia is essentially the NATO strategy. They wanted to get up the old Soviet states. And they've expanded the border of NATO all across, up to the point where it's the border of Russia itself, even going so far as to create a destabilization within the Ukraine. That goes both ways. Russia acted on this, but the destabilization essentially was because it was the potential of NATO being on the border of Russia via the Ukraine. This is a country that has lost, 20 million people in World War II and I think like 10 million in World War I, or some insane number in both of these wars. They've been invaded multiple times. They've been invaded by the United States at one point, going all the way back in the First World War. You can imagine they may be sensitive about their borders. Now, I say that to say that the strategy of NATO is, for all intents and purposes, the strategy of what Austria-Hungary had during the time in the First World War, or before the First World War erupted. Or what elements of Austria-Hungary wanted to have. They were proponents of it in the Austrian government to gobble up those countries. Essentially what NATO is doing. But NATO is not necessarily doing it militarily. NATO is, however, doing the same thing. Second part, oil. In World War II, people were always confused by Hitler's strategy of attacking the Soviet Union. They didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to them. Why on earth would Hitler do that? That makes no sense. I mean, yes, everybody knew that for the most part, neither one of these countries were going to be able to stay together. And people like to try to hit Stalin for forming a pact with Hitler, but Stalin did try to form a pact with the Western Allies. The Western Allies, with the Russophobic that they were, didn't want to do that then, and so he went with Hitler. He had no illusions. Both of them understood that this pact wasn't necessarily going to last. But there was one catch. The reason Hitler invaded Russia, or the Soviet Union, was because he needed oil. German war machine, if you ever look at the old footage, what you would see is you see tanks, you see cars and trucks, and you see horses. Why are they using horses? They have cars and trucks. They had oil issues. Germany could only keep up that war effort for a certain amount of time. And their taking over those different areas was in order to try to get to the oil fields. The decision to take Moscow wasn't Hitler's choice. It was somebody else's that made a choice that countermanded Hitler, essentially did it without Hitler knowing that he was going to do it. Now, Hitler at this point thought, I can't trust my generals, which to some degree was right. They started blaming everything on Hitler, meaning all of these bad choices. But the reason why Hitler was making these choices was because it was impossible for him to keep up the war effort if they couldn't get their hands on oil. Meaning the fields in Baku and some of the areas in southern Russia were far more important than grabbing Moscow. The time it took Hitler to go rescue, if I'm not mistaken, the Italy's failing army, because again, Hitler started a war before Mussolini was ready, cost them. They needed oil. What Germany is talking about now, saying we need oil, that problem hasn't necessarily gone anywhere. Germany is a country like any other country that has energy needs. And in this particular case, well, they're trying to deal with it with Russia. The funny irony to this stuff, man, I swear it's so fucking weird. You know, Germany was trying to take over Europe forcefully, Hitler. Well, through economic means, you can make an argument that Brussels runs through Berlin. You can make a case that Germany has economically tackled Europe. Beyond economically tackling Europe, this interplay between Germany and Russia from the standpoint of this oil thing is going to create a relationship. Whereas Hitler was running to try to get oil from Russia forcefully, once again, through economic means, you have this thing where they're creating a relationship. This stuff is so weird to me. It's like you look back 50, 60 years and it's unrecognizable compared to now. If they want to have a pipeline, that has nothing to do with Trump. By the same token, I don't think people are crazy for saying, how are you in an organization that's antagonistic towards Russia while at the same time getting oil from Russia? But let's be honest. What Trump wants in this is he wants access to those markets. Meaning he's being caustic because he wants his American companies to get their hands on those oil markets. Same thing with the weapons. The United States is a main player in weapons technology. Half of those things come to us. You can say half of every dollar spent on those weapons in NATO, more than half comes to us. So you can understand why Donald Trump is saying up your weapons production. It's just a jobs program for us. So that's what's taking place right now. Trump being derisive. I hope this makes sense. I hope this makes sense. So let's see who's here. I didn't think anybody would be interested in this story, so I'm kind of shocked. World War II, Germany made oil from synthetic gas. Yes, but that was an expensive process. Like, they had the capacity to make oil from synthetic gas, but that showed you how desperate they were, which just backs up my point even more. They didn't necessarily want to do that. They did that because they didn't have a choice but to do that. They were being starved for oil. They didn't have those resources. They didn't have the resources. There are reports that came out that showed that they only had, I think it was like a 2-month window to which they can run their weapons machines, or they can run their military machines before it gets to the point where it is a critical mass. They were running already on fumes by the time they were hitting some of those areas in the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union had a damn good job of destroying the oil fields. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, in the notes, Germany commends the Soviet Union how well and how thoroughly they did a good job in destroying the oil fields before they can get their hands on them. Yes, they can use synthetic gas. It's not something that they wanted to do. Red, white, blue, dude. Germany is dependent on Russia for gas, the Nord Stream pipeline. Yes, that's true. Look, if we take Trump at his word, what he's saying is not necessarily completely insane. You guys are saying you're terrified of Russia while simultaneously being dependent on them for oil. This seems weird. This seems weird. By the same token, there is a certain kind of logic that says if we have a trade relationship, the closer we are, the less likely there is for chaos. Look, let's be honest. NATO, to some degree, is a sham. It's a military organization that's looking for an enemy, and it's been expanding its borders across Russia as if Russia, in this case, is the enemy. Missing the point that the very fact that you're behaving that way is forcing a response in the person that you're behaving that way with. If I pull out a gun, what are you going to do? Stand there with your knife, or are you going to get a gun? If I put a missile in space, or if I put a laser in space, what are you going to do? Stand there and let me just keep that laser in space and be able to dictate the way things are? No, you're also going to probably put a laser in space. There's a certain level of escalation that takes place to maintain parity. If you are putting rings around the country, what do you think the country is going to do to respond? I mean, come on. What took place from the standpoint of the Ukraine was expected just based on the behavior of the nations that were around it. Just saying. Never underestimate the lack of intelligence in America. Civil disobedience. Jason Mieros. USA stopped research. Of course, we suck at it. Jamal, is not weird. Everyone wants to have their cake and eat it too. If you frame it, the idiots will believe it. Yes. Yes, but I think Americans don't pay attention to media or news like talking about it. I think they get snapshots. They hear Trump scolding the NATO. They're like, yes, you fucking tell him, Trump. He's fighting for America. He's fighting for America. Of course, that's nonsense. Trump is only in it for himself. You're talking about draining the swamp. He is the goddamn swamp. You're threatening us, Jamal. Go ahead and pull your gun. We aren't scared. We aren't scared. Trump is referencing the Madrid Circular and plans made in World War I Germany. I don't know what the Madrid Circular is. I'm going to have to look that up. Madrid Circular. CRCLR. Now check it out. Noam Chomsky spoke at length about how sound bites prevent coherent discourse. Yeah. Well, it's just people ingrain them into their minds, and they construct their reality with those sound bites, not necessarily having the larger understanding of what's taking place. Watch Trump on UK channel earlier, quite astonished, admonishment and pressure. Yeah. I've never seen this. I've never seen this. His base may look at this and like it, but Trump is alienating allies. The Europe right now is in conversation about whether or not they want to have a military. Being dependent on the United States, Trump is so fractured the way in which we engage with Europe, that they are actually considering a military. They were considering a military before. They're definitely escalating that now. Now, of course, the question becomes, are those military resources going to compete with NATO resources? In which case the answer is always going to be, at some point, yes. Meaning, will it get to the point where they say we don't need NATO? And I got to be honest, a reality show host, I'm not going to take a lesson from a reality show host. And yet they sat there and took it because they were political actors, and they sat there and let him browbeat them. Why are you allowing America to talk to you in this way? Why are you letting them talk to you in this way? I would say the United States is not a valuable ally to us now, right now, that we're not. Look, if something happens, there would be political pressure for Donald Trump to act. Meaning, if something takes place, he will act in your interests. If Russia, out of the blue, for whatever reason, decided to take Estonia, yeah, he would act. But if you're talking about a valuable ally for trade or a valuable ally for anything else, no. You're literally in a trade war with him right now as we speak. He's being a spoiled child because he wants pipelines in Germany. As if Germany shouldn't have, the ability to use their own resources. That's insane. Now, again, that being said, the letter of what he's saying, that is a decent question. Why are you making yourself dependent upon them if you are terrified of them? How are you having it both ways? And I guess the point I would make is it's somewhat of a strange relationship, but you can make the case that the more trade and the more entanglements that you have, the less likely there is for chaos. So, what Germany is doing, to some degree, I would argue, is a better path than the militaristic nature of NATO. But I suspect the militaristic nature of NATO just wants to find a reason to exist. Here's the thing. Existence in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean something should continue to exist. Meaning, the fact that something is doesn't mean it should continue to be. And this is kind of one of those things with NATO. NATO, when the Soviet Union went bust, NATO had no reason to exist. Why are you there? Why are you there? What are you doing? It's like a ghost at this point. The purpose and the reason for NATO vanished the moment that the Soviet Union imploded. There were certain assurances that was made that was completely ignored and lied. We escalated. We moved it all around, meaning we moved NATO all around the borders of Russia. We've put military weapons and hardware all around their borders. I mean, this is... Look, my point is, if they're that terrified, how are you having this relationship? But by the same token, you can make a case that says, in order to bring down tensions, we're trying to have a trade relationships. So, the logic that Trump is using on this is not necessarily... It belies a historical context where there is a relationship between Russia and Germany that goes back God knows how long. And whatever they want to say, other countries may have certain issues and qualms with Germany. Poland, I believe, Poland and Ukraine had issues with Germany making that deal. Germany is a sovereign country. Do whatever it wants. Do what it wants. NATO should give the United States the boot across the Atlantic. How come they let Colombia in? I don't know why they let Colombia in, and I suspect that NATO looks at it as, if the United States is stupid enough to spend all that money on the military to be a policeman around the world, let them. Also, I suspect some of this is just historical momentum, meaning you had those military bases over there after World War II, and those things just stayed. They just stayed. They let Saudi Arabia in, didn't they? I don't know. I know Turkey is in, but I'm not sure. Krilling 876. Crimea succeeded, was not annexed by Russia. Now, this is a good point, because the West usually uses this argument as if Vladimir Putin just stole it, just ripped it off the ripped it off the map and added it to Russia. As opposed to the majority of those people wanting to be in Russia. Wanting to be in Russia. Succeeded, yeah. Not succeeded. I know what he means. I know what he means. Saudi Arabia is not a NATO nation. Okay, yeah. I thought Turkey is, but I don't know about Saudi Arabia. Yes, Crimea voted to join Russia. Yeah, they voted. But people keep making this point as if it was stolen and taken. Or annexed. This is a word they like to use in the West. It was annexed. Like Fukushima, aren't we supposed to be dead and mutant fish, glowing Japanese supermean and all that stuff? What happened? Please look at nuclear. I did hear that the nuclear, it was supposed to be like waste or something that was floating from Fukushima. The elites are still perpetrating the post-World War II BS and throw the war, as though the war has never ended. Yeah, the United States has. The United States didn't. Was that true? After Eisenhower slightly de-escalated. But ultimately, we kept the military thing, into the Cold War. So yeah, we never really de-escalated. Never really de-escalated. Crimea is a much more complicated argument than Russia, Chuck E. Cheese. Crimea wasn't stolen from Mexico. No, Crimea wasn't stolen from Mexico, Bob. All right. I'm going to have to look up Madrid Circular. But I'm putting the articles at the bottom that were used for reference on this. Okay. I thought I did. But yeah, the relationship between Germany and Russia is somewhat complicated. And I suspect strongly that a lot of Trump's posturing here has to do with what's great for his base and what he's told to advocate for by his cronies. Beltasar, Trump is the 0.01% who's looking out for the 0.0001%. I love that one. Because 0.0001% is less than 0.01%, they're the little guy. No, I got the joke, Beltasar. I got it. A little math humor. I got it. Krillin876, big oil-owned politicians. In other news, water is wet. Water is wet. Look, I think the thing is, Krillin, like I said, I think people see snapshots when they look at politics. And so they see Trump being belligerent to NATO. I think his people who like Trump says, yes, Trump is giving it to the man. This reality show host who's failed at all sorts of things is just shaking his fists at the world order. By the same token, he's shaking his fist at the world order because he's trying to get profits for, like you said, Beltasar, the top 0.01%. They're looking at this stuff through a lens as if he's doing something on their benefit. He is not. He is not. Tim Flowbug, Beltasar, Trump, I demand you to rebuild Berlin Wall and Mexico pay for it. I love that. I love that. I love that. Tell Chris, look up Robert Boussard and the Polywell. Why is that name familiar to me? Boussard is familiar to me. I'm not sure why, though. Look at where they stored the waste from Fukushima, right on the shoreline in plastic bags. Are you serious, Garden? Oh, that sucks. That sucks. Beltasar, we're making a Crimean wall and they'll pay for it. They'll pay for it. You know, Trump has come out and said Crimea was part of Russia. The funny part is RT blazes that. Every American president says the Crimea belongs to Russia. The American president said Crimea belongs to Russia. That's hilarious. Boussard collectors in Star Trek. Oh, that's probably why I know them. That's probably where I know them. They're just pissed because people knew that VWs are pieces of shit. That's funny. That's funny. Neo-Nazis funded by Israel. Yeah, I did that video, Civil. I did that video. That's amazing, right? That's amazing. And the wild part is, Israeli government had been petitioned, or was petitioned. There's another article that came out saying the Israeli government was being petitioned to stop funding neo-Nazis. It's amazing. Trump excites the Democratic establishment, little lizard brains, and they go crazy. Thank Jah. Thank Jah. NATO should boot the United States, replace it with Russia. Europe joins Eurasia on Belt Road Initiative. United States keys on strengthening North and South America relations, hemisphere trade with each other without war. Michael Rado Wedo. See, the thing is, they're still in this mindset or this mentality that Russia is going to gobble them up and Russia is the enemy and is going to take over all these other countries. Germany was a country that was trying to take over other countries. It wasn't Russia. And I understand during the Cold War thing, we're not in a Cold War. Or at the very least, we've escalated this to some weird degree of a Cold War. But it doesn't have to be. This is somewhat manufactured. This is not necessarily reality per se. I kind of agree with you. NATO is a militaristic organization. It's addressing Russia in a militaristic fashion on their border. What is Russia supposed to do? If there was a militaristic organization on the border of the United States, bordering Mexico and Canada, what would the United States do? What would the United States do? I strongly suspect the United States would not allow it. Or, at the very least, we will be extraordinarily militaristic in how we go about our foreign policy. Let's be honest about this. It's not all Russia. Beltasar, Vulcan doesn't send the best. They're rapists, they're murderers, and some, I assume, are good people. We'll make a wall around Vulcan. They'll pay for it. We'll get the Balkans to pay for it. I assume some of them are good people. Are you really surprised about Israel? They're fascists. Hitler would be proud. Bart Cyblisky. I gotta be honest. I am surprised about them funding Nazis. I am surprised about them funding Nazis. That would be like finding an African American funding slave owners. It's slightly weird. It's strange. It's one of those things that digs into you from a cultural standpoint. But hey, they're funding ISIS to some degree. They were supporting and protecting ISIS and terrorists in that part of the world in Syria. They've even come out saying that ISIS, in this case, were the people who should be supported. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Secular Talk host Kyle Kalinske covered the Israel arming neo-Nazi story. Yeah, I covered that maybe a week or so ago. Follow the money. Always follow the money. Space Nazis are highly illogical. Are they? Are they? Not Nazis. Not Nazis in a proper sense. But what if Hitler won? What if he didn't wait on the beach when the Germans, when the Brits were on the beach and their military, their army was on the beach? What if they didn't wait for Dunkirk and they just bombed the shit out of Dunkirk, killing all the Brits? Britain being open for taking over an Operation Sea Lion. What happens if Hitler wins? Let's say he doesn't win everything. Let's say he just wins all of Europe. He consolidates his power. The moment he consolidates his power, he's going to also punch America. What does that world look like? What I'm trying to get at is, if you had a world that was organized in that way, what would it look like? Would there be dissent? Would everybody have health care? Would there be organizations? And what happens if that civilization leaves the planet and ends up somewhere else? Just saying, it's terrifying. Space Nazi thing is terrifying. Yeah, the man in the high tower is what we have. Yeah, Fletcher Daniels. But I'm saying expand upon that to the point of, he was making the point of space Nazis. Making the point that, what does it look like when, yeah, I haven't seen Man in the High Tower. I've never watched it. But yeah, essentially. Man, that show was good. Yeah, I haven't seen it. I need to watch it. Well, we wouldn't have had Israel. You wouldn't have had a lot of stuff. Sorry, check beautiful article about Caitlin Johnston. Nation horrified to learn child-killing death merchants have racist employees. Great comment. Yeah, Katie Johnson is fucking awesome. It's absolutely awesome. Hey Jamal, do you have a new microphone or something? I do have a new microphone, Next Tunes. I got it yesterday, just before I talked to Jared Beck. So far, I like it. So far, I like it. Badger Damon. So I Googled space Nazis and found the Guardian headline, Nazi Buddha from space might be fake. Yeah, it might be. It might be. I love the fact that it might be fake. I guess there's a chance. There's a 0.0000001% chance that it might be real, but it might be fake. Just wait until the aliens discriminate against us for being pre-hyperspace civilization. I'd imagine the United States would have nuked Berlin. Here's another thing. A civilization comes to this planet. The civilization says, look, we noticed that you eat animals. Great. You're a lesser form of life than us. We've designated it so. And humanity is like, whoa, what do you mean you've designated us as a lesser form of life? Well, you do the same thing to your animals. What's the difference? We can talk. Yeah, that's not enough of a difference. We communicate through telepathic communication. You're a lesser form of life. You're fair game to eat. What's the argument of humanity at that point? What's the argument of humanity? I would imagine at that point that's a war, but I don't know how you're going to win that war. If anything, you're going to be fucking eaten. Just saying. You cannot speculate about alien civilizations because by definition, their thought processes and civilization and cultures and aliens. You can absolutely speculate about alien civilizations. Whether you're going to get it right or not, that's the catch. Tonight on Mad Hour, Russians have a space tractor beam that pull the voting levers for Trump. Tim Flowbug. Beltasar, what if South Park was right? We're a space sitcom. A Truman Show in space. They're looking at us like, look at those stupid idiots. Look at those stupid idiots. All right, I'm going to end this. I've been up for a few nights, so I'm going to get some rest. This is probably going to be the last show for the night. Guys, thank you for joining the show. And I want to thank all of you for the support on the show. So, you guys are awesome. I would likely probably not see you till tomorrow, but who knows? If I can't sleep, I'll probably be back. So, all right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks, guys. There might be one more. There's a PMQ that I want to do. I may do Prime Minister questions. So, all right, guys. Have a good one.